For a long time, this case existed in a quiet, uncomfortable space. Not fully forgotten, but no longer discussed. Officially, it was closed, the paperwork was finished. The evidence was boxed, labeled, and stored. To the system, it was resolved. To the families, it never was, because some cases are not closed by truth. They are closed by exhaustion. In November of 1998, nearly 7 years after one of the most notorious crimes in Texas history, the Lexington Fire Department received a call just before 8 in the morning. A structure fire at a small commercial building known as the Nixon Hearing Aid Center. Fires like this happened often enough that no one expected what would be found inside. It looked routine: smoke damage, burnt wiring, another fire to extinguish. But once the flames were out, firefighters noticed something that did not belong. In the back hallway of the building lay the body of a woman. She was not burned beyond recognition. She was not the victim of smoke inhalation. She had been shot multiple times in the head. Her name was Linda Marie Rutledge. Linda was 43 years old. She had a life, a routine. People who expected to hear from her that day and never did. She was not a mystery to those who knew her. She was a person, reduced in a single moment to a crime scene. The investigation quickly revealed the fire was intentional. It had been set after Linda was killed. The purpose was clear: destroy evidence, delay discovery, erase the details of what had happened. The autopsy revealed that Linda had been sexually assaulted before she was executed. The crime was not impulsive. It was deliberate, controlled, and methodical. Detectives worked the case as thoroughly as they could with the tools available at the time. Evidence was collected. DNA samples were taken. A .380 caliber shell casing was recovered. But in the late 1990s, forensic science had limits. DNA databases were small. Ballistic comparisons across states were slow and fragmented. There was no match, no suspect, no arrest. The case went cold. For Linda's family, cold did not mean quiet. It meant years of unanswered questions, years of waiting for phone calls that never came, years of living with uncertainty. Eventually, the case faded from public memory. Another unsolved homicide filed away. What investigators did not know was that the same violence had already appeared years earlier, in a different state, under far more public scrutiny. On December 6, 1991, in Austin, Texas, 4 teenage girls were inside an "I can't believe it's yogurt" shop just before closing. It should have been an ordinary night. 2 of them worked there. The others were friends waiting to be picked up. Amy Ayers was only 13. Eliza Thomas was 17. Jennifer Harbison was 17. Her younger sister Sarah was 15. They never made it home. At some point that night, a man entered the shop through the back. What followed was a level of violence that would haunt Austin for decades. The girls were restrained. They were sexually assaulted. Then, one by one, they were shot in the head at close range. Afterward, the building was set on fire. Firefighters discovered their bodies while the shop was still burning. The city was stunned. Parents panicked. Media coverage was relentless. Investigators were under immediate pressure to find answers. The case became one of the most high-profile unsolved crimes in Texas history. And under that pressure, mistakes were made. Over the years, dozens of people confessed to the murders, many of them falsely. Some were mentally ill, some were coerced. Some simply wanted attention. 4 men were arrested, tried, and convicted. 2 were sentenced to death. Years later, advances in DNA testing proved they were innocent. Their convictions were overturned. Their lives had been permanently damaged by a system desperate for closure. Meanwhile, the real killer remained free. For decades, the yogurt shop murders became synonymous with investigative failure. The public lost trust. families lost hope. Every new lead ended the same way. Nothing fit, nothing held. Then, slowly, technology began to change. By the early 2020s, forensic science had advanced far beyond what investigators in the 1990s could have imagined. DNA analysis became more precise. Ballistic databases became interconnected. Evidence that once seemed useless could finally speak. In 2025, investigators revisited the Lexington case. The .380 caliber shell casing recovered from the Nixon Hearing Aid Center was entered into the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. This time, the system returned a match. Not just any match, but one tied to the Austin yogurt shop murders. 2 crime scenes, 7 years apart, hundreds of miles between them, connected by a single piece of metal. DNA testing followed. Samples from both scenes were reanalyzed using modern methods. The results pointed to one man, a name that had never been seriously connected to either case at the time: Robert Eugene Brashers. Brashers had a long history of violent crime. He moved frequently, he targeted vulnerable victims. His pattern was consistent: sexual assault, execution-style gunshots, fire used to destroy evidence. In January of 1999, Brashers died by suicide during a standoff with police in Missouri. At the time of his death, none of these connections were known. For years, he had escaped justice not because he was invisible, but because the tools to identify him did not yet exist. The DNA did more than solve 2 cases. It exposed a pattern that had gone unnoticed for decades. It explained why earlier suspects never fit, why false confessions filled the gaps, why the crimes felt connected but could not be proven. For Linda Rutledge's family, the truth arrived late. There would be no arrest, no trial, no sentence, only confirmation. Her death was not random. She was targeted by a serial offender who believed he could erase his actions. For the families of the Austin victims, the revelation was bittersweet. After decades of public trials, documentaries, overturned convictions, and unanswered questions, the truth emerged quietly. The man responsible had been dead for years. Justice, in the traditional sense, would never come. Law enforcement agencies across multiple states confirmed the findings: Austin Police, Lexington Police, state forensic labs, independent DNA experts. The conclusion was unanimous. The cases were solved. But closure is not the same as peace. There is something uniquely disturbing about cases like this, not just because of the violence, but because of the silence that follows. Years where nothing moves. Years where families age without answers. Years where the truth exists, but remains unreachable. This case forces an uncomfortable question. How many other cases were closed not because they were solved, but because the system gave up? How many truths are still waiting for the right technology, the right person, the right moment? Robert Eugene Brashers believed fire erased evidence, that time erased memory, that death erased accountability. He was wrong. A shell casing survived, DNA survived, memory survived, and the truth waited. This case was closed. It should never have been.